Welcome everyone to the ASPA podcast. My name is Karen Neckelman, and today we are joined by Angela Wise-Landman. She is Executive Director of Human Resources and Data in Pine Bush Central School District, Pine Bush, New York. Hello, Angela, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
Of course. So, to start the conversation, can you tell us a bit about your background?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been in education in this industry for public education for the last 12 plus years. I actually started my career in higher education working with SUNY, State University of New York, across two different community college campuses, working with first generation students, at risk of graduating students, and primarily, being tasked with ensuring that they had all the supports that they needed to finish. And from there, my career kind of led me down this very interesting and wonderful path of many different opportunities. I was able to cross over from higher ed into the secondary ed space because a financial aid counseling position became available in a high school setting. So I was able to cross over that way in public ed and K-12 space, and then decided to go from there for my administrative certifications. So I am a New York State certified school district business leader and a school district leader. I have two master's degrees. I have an MBA from Mount St. Mary College, local small college, private, here in the state of New York. And then I also have my master's in educational leadership from Pace University, a little bit larger private institution, again, here in the state of New York. And I currently, just this past summer, started my doctoral studies in educational leadership, and I'm planning to finish, hopefully, with my dissertation and all of those wonderful things by the summer of 2027. So education has been my path. I've loved it. I've loved working with students and families. For the last 6 years, I've been serving the Pine Bush Central School District as the Executive Director of HR. And this is actually the community in the district that I attended and grew up in as a child. So to be able to give back the last 6 years in this role to the community, the parents, families, and staff that helped, raise me and get me to where I am in this point in my life and in my career has just been wonderful and has just been full circle for me.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so thank you.
The show today is going to be about why building intentional relationships at work matter in a K-12 school setting. So to start, in the corporate world, HR is often seen as the compliance department. So in a K-12 setting, how do you pivot the role of HR from being a purely administrative gatekeeper to a culture architect who prioritizes intentional relationships?
Yeah, so great question. So I would say that it's definitely that intentionality piece and building those relationships and that rapport with stakeholders and with staff across the district. And it's really my philosophy has been the last 6 years since I've been here, starting right when the COVID pandemic hit, is really putting the human first and emphasizing the human part of human resources and really meeting with folks and understanding their why behind why they got into their roles or their positions or why they wanted to serve the district in the capacities in which they are, and working with them to capitalize on that why, ensuring that they feel supported, valued, safe, heard in their working environment. Having voices at the table when decisions are being made, I think is paramount, and it not just being done in silos. When decisions are being made impacting whether it's something instructional or something operational, ensuring that folks feel empowered enough to have voice in that decision-making process. So I think that's a real big key component of it is ensuring that people feel more than just a number in their workspace or a number on that employee roster, that they truly feel like that there's purpose behind their work every day when they show up, and again, that they feel valued, safe, supported, and heard. So those are just my key values, in the work that I do each and every day.
Mhm. So, and we often talk about teacher-student relationships, but we rarely discuss how staff-to-staff dynamics impact the classroom. So, from your perspective, how does a fracture or soiled front office or faculty lounge eventually manifests in student outcomes?
Sure. So from my experience, especially these last 6 years, taking a look at, student outcomes and student achievement scores and things of that nature, um, 9 times out of 10, a big piece of that is failure to collaborate or failure to work together as a team in that classroom or school environment. And that could be for a number of reasons. A lot of time in our special education spaces, we have like a co-teach model where we have a special education teacher and a general education teacher working hand in hand to support that classroom environment. And sometimes you could have different perspectives, different viewpoints on how that instruction should be or should not be delivered. And that can have an impact for sure on the kids in that classroom and how they're achieving and how they're doing. So I think it's really important from not only a district leader perspective as the person in charge of human resources, but also as the building leader, as the principal, and it's my role to work with those principals to identify those issues and mediate through them, and get everybody back on that same playing field and on that same page. At the end of the day, we don't all have to like each other, but we all have to come together with that common goal in mind of putting these students first and getting them to the finish line, of that school year, whatever that may look like for each individual child, right?
Mhm.
Um, so that definitely has an impact. And then that can also trickle into main office spaces as well. I've seen, clerical, employees not be able, to get along or have issues, whether that be differing communication styles or things of that nature, or differing perspectives on how the office should be run or operated. And again, it's working with those supervisors and those building administrators in mediating those situations and getting to a common ground, and doing some conflict resolution there. So it definitely, we're supposed to work together as a team to get these kids through. And a silo for anybody in any role, whether it's a custodian, food service worker, or principals or assistant principals, it isn't beneficial for anybody. We should all be working together as a team to foster
Mhm.
that student growth.
And you also have the issue of school schedule being like rigid and high pressure. So how can HR encourage staff to build intentional connections without feeling like it's just another meeting or an item or a checklist that contributes to burnout?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, um, I've come to find that it's again going back to that intentionality piece of even just like having lunch together, right? Or stepping out real quick together if you can, if you have a moment to go get a cup of coffee, have a conversation, and getting to know each other, on an individual level to understand your perspectives, right? So I always encourage, especially my leadership staff, across our district, to do that and to bridge those relationships. And a lot of the times that doesn't always come natural for some folks, and it takes some practice, definitely to get better at that and to build those connections in that way. But that is the best way to go about it without it feeling like another thing that they have to do, right? It's trying to make it as normal as possible, and not only normal, but as comfortable as possible, and taking that just, 10, 15 minutes a day to check in with people, whether that be stopping them and chatting for a little bit, in the hallway and passing, inviting them to come to your office to have lunch together, to have a, a coffee break or whatever that may be. But that's really like the best way, in my opinion, that I've seen to be most successful without it feeling so formalized and having kind of like that open door policy.
So, and do you feel like when you have a relationship that it's already established, do you feel like it's easier to have the hard conversations when problems arise?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you already have that relationship with that staff member and that rapport with that staff member, it makes it 10 times easier to hold them accountable, in my opinion, right? Because you really understand their why and who they are as a human being. So when you sit across the table from them to have, whether that be a difficult conversation or to talk about post observation, if it's a classroom observation, if it's an instructional person, or a performance review for a non-instructional person, and there are some areas of growth, that you'd like to see, I think it's much easier to address that and have those conversations when you've already built that relationship and that rapport with that individual. That relationship and that rapport is established. So there's trust there. So when that relationship, that foundation is built and there's trust from that relationship, then they trust that you have their best interests at heart and that what you're sharing with them is coming from a genuine place of wanting to see them succeed and to grow and to be successful. So absolutely, I would say it would definitely make it easier to have those more difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm. So, and well, you know what, we are having challenges in teacher retention,
Mhm.
and we know people often leave bosses and not jobs. So, what do you think? What specific relationship first strategies have you seen actually move the needle on keeping high quality educators in your district?
Putting family first. Putting family first. So letting staff know that it's okay that when an emergency arises or when something is going on and they're having a difficult time personally or professionally, that we're there for them, that we're here to support them. That certainly, if they need to take the time that they need, whether that be, various different kinds of PTO time, sick time, personal time, it's giving them the grace to do so and letting them know that it's okay. So it's twofold. It's giving them grace, treating them like a human being, in addition with having that empathy for whatever situations they may be dealing with personally or professionally, whether inside or outside of the workplace, and giving like a true listening ear. So to me, I feel like that's the biggest piece of how relationship first strategies can keep those high quality, not only educators, but high quality staff across the board with your district long term. And also empowering them as well too, to make decisions and letting them know that you trust them to make those decisions, and that they're truly the experts, in their field
Mm-hmm.
without micromanaging them. So I think that's also a key piece as well.
For sure. So, and to finish the conversation, so the first 90 days are critical for new teacher or a staff member. So beyond the paperwork and the handbook, what is one intentional ritual or practice you recommend for onboarding that maybe helps a new hire feel like they belong, like to the family immediately?
Sure. So it's not only practicing that empathy piece and that listening piece, that I mentioned just before with the prior question, but something that I really am working on that I'd love to implement here, this school year is something that I like to refer to as stay interviews. A lot of the times we hear of the concept of like an exit interview when someone resigns or is leaving, right, your workplace. But I'd like to, incorporate stay interviews as well, which is really just like a check-in with those new staff once they hit that 30-day mark or that 60-day mark, whatever that may be, and saying, okay, you've now been here for a whole month or 2 whole months. How is it going? You know, and making them, aware of the fact that this is a safe, confidential space, and really trying to understand, like, are you feeling supported? If not, what can we do to support you? And really showing them that we're committed and we're invested to them staying with us long term. So I
Mhm.
think that's one simple strategy that can really go a long way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, Angela. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we hope to have you some other time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Karen.